Welcome to Basecamp. Multiple readings from the book of Exodus. Starting in chapter 27. You shall make the altar of acacia wood. I'm going to start in chapter 26. Moreover, you shall make the tabernacle with 10 curtains of fine twisted linen, and blue, purple, and crimson yarns. You shall make them with cherubim skillfully worked into them. The length of each curtain shall be 28 cubits, and the width of each curtain 4 cubits. All the curtains shall be of the same size. You shall make upright frames of acacia wood for the tabernacle. 10 cubits shall be the length of a frame, and 1.5 cubits the width of each frame. You shall make the altar of acacia wood 5 cubits long and 5 cubits wide. The altar shall be square, and it shall be 3 cubits high. You shall make the court of the tabernacle. On the south side, the court shall have hangings of fine twisted linen, 100 cubits long for that side. You shall further command the Israelites to bring to you pure oil of beaten olives for the light, so that a lamp may be set up to burn regularly. In the tent of meeting outside the curtain that is before the covenant, Aaron and his sons shall tend to it from evening until morning before the Lord. It shall be a perpetual ordinance to be observed throughout their generations by the Israelites. And from the 11th chapter of Matthew, Jesus said, "Come to me, all you that are weary and carrying heavy burdens. I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls." The word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God. There's a pretty well-known hike in the Himalayas. Most people have never been on this hike because the hike itself is so incredibly challenging. It's a daunting task. If you're going to do this hike, you need to set aside 8 days. 8 days to get all of your gear, to get all of the food that you're going to need. Oxygen tanks, if you choose to carry oxygen with you, ropes, other gear, harnesses, the right kind of packs, the right team of people to go with you. And for those 8 days is what it takes the average person to make that trek. This 8-day trek is only the beginning, because that's the length that it takes of time and distance to get from the airport to the base camp at the base of Mount Everest. For those who embark on the further journey to climb up the mountain, that's going to be another 45 days. 45 more days once you arrive at base camp. At base camp, you're going to find all of the things that you're going to need, hopefully, to embark on the rest of your journey. You find community gathered there. It's going to be a supportive group of people that you're going to encounter. People who are all there sharing the same kind of objective. What is it that you are there to do? You come together. You form community. It's a diverse community. I mean, people from all over the world descend, or ascend rather, to the base camp so that they can ascend further up onto Mount Everest. They come from all corners of the globe. And if you have enough resources, and if you have 2 months to spare, and you've done all of the training, and have all of the equipment, and have the right climbing team, and the right guide, you may be able to accomplish this task. But you go to base camp and you form a new fellowship, and you break bread with these people, and you get acclimated to the altitude. And then you get additional training. And then you begin your quest, which is why you are really there, which is to begin the ascent up the mountain. Some will make it, some will try and come back. They may come back because they're injured and they need healing. They may need further relief. They may wait for optimal conditions higher up on the summit before they take on the peak. But it's a 2-month process for everybody that chooses to undertake this incredible journey and expedition. But for most, just getting to base camp is an accomplishment. In the passage that you just heard me read, those excerpts from Exodus, don't get me wrong, I get it. they were a weird sort of collection of scriptures, which is probably what you're thinking. What in the world are we talking about this for? But this is the interesting part of the story. And see, what happened here is that Moses has taken all of the Israelites out of Egypt. They've been enslaved under Pharaoh and under the Egyptian community. The Passover event happens. Moses takes the Israelites and leads them out under God's direction in the night to go into the wilderness for what will be 40 years before they're able to enter the promised land. They go into the unknown. They cross through the Sea of Reeds or the Red Sea. They enter into the Sinai Peninsula, and there they encounter a foreboding desert. Sand on the ground, sharp cliffs and mountain peaks that look very dangerous. And it's an easy place to be disoriented or to get lost. And finally, this group of people, after several weeks' time, eventually lands at this place where God gives Moses some future direction. And he says, you see the highest peak? I want you to go up there and we're going to have a talk. So Moses turns to the Israelites and says, make yourselves comfortable. Might as well set up a base camp here. I need to go up the mountain. Moses goes up the mountain. First thing he comes down, he's got a list of rules. We get the 10 commandments. The people disobey. Moses goes back up, comes back down. We try again. There's other additional rules. Some of the rules are about how to live as a community, what their purpose is, what their identity should be, how they might respond and care and concern to one another, and live faithfully with good boundaries as a community of people. The other rules are about serving God, loving God, how we show our appreciation for God in our midst, and the promise of God with the people to deliver them through this time period. Then Moses goes up the mountain again, comes back, and this time God's got more instructions. And that's what you heard from today. All that about acacia wood and cubits and the south side of this and that. It's all the very specific kind of carpentry, architectural, interior design kind of instructions that God gives. Because the base camp is going to prove to be important. The base camp is where the people are for 40 years. Now, the camp picks up and moves with the people from time to time as they are on this journey together. But God says this part is going to be important too. You are going to need something to bring you together, to rally everyone together. There's going to be a tent of meeting. There's going to be a tabernacle. There's going to be a holiest of holies eventually that comes out of this process. But all of this is to gather the people to say, you need a place to worship. You need a place to congregate. You need a place to pray. You need a place to offer your sacrifices. And that's going to be a part that stays with you. And it will be a reminder when you gather there that I am at the center of your community. I am in your midst at all times. And so the directions are very oddly specific. They're very particular. But God has something in mind here when he gives these instructions. Because of this story and because of all the obvious analogies, I think that the church and Basecamp are good mirrors of each other. The Basecamp serves as a wonderful illustration of what the church is supposed to be. Is this or is this not a gathering of diverse people who come from different places, who meet with a similar kind of goal in mind? We come together, we grow, we learn, we get acclimated, we experience challenges together, we break bread together, we form a community of people who might not otherwise find themselves in the same circles. And here we are, gathered together with God at the center of our base camp once again and leading us forward. The base camp matters. It makes a difference. If there's no further objective of going up the mountain at Mount Everest, the base camp doesn't exist. But the base camp is always meant to be a spot along the journey. And that's what it is for us too. Now, over the next few weeks, I'm going to be continuing to talk about this idea of the church as a base camp and why a base camp makes a difference to us and why caring for and tending to our base camp should make a difference to all of us, even though the base camp is not the real point of why we're here. The community is part of why we're here. What we go to do beyond these walls is what we are here for, right? But it's a gathering place. It's been described as a hospital for sinners. It's been described as a way station along the way. It's become described as a checkpoint for us. But we're going to talk about the church as a base camp. And the base camp makes a difference, and we're going to talk about why. But this whole idea for the next few weeks is because what we are embarking on now and 3 more Sundays that follow, is on 2 significant financial campaigns. Now, the one is the annual campaign that we do each fall. It's the stewardship program, when we talk about why it's important to give, why we give, and making our commitments for the year 2023. Because those are the gifts that come in the offering plate that you give online or give as an auto debit or e-giving. And we're grateful for all of those gifts, and those are important. So this is a part of that. And just so that we're clear, I am calling this, and this is original, the 2023 campaign, okay? So just so that we're clear about what we're talking about, the 2023 campaign. And in that, we get everything that you see in the life of the church, right? That's where our resources go. So the little white pens that you see in all the pockets in front of you where you're seated today with the church's logo and name on it, yeah, that comes from the offering money that comes in the plates on Sunday morning. The lights overhead, same story. The staff, same story. Much of the missions work that we do, same story. Bibles that we presented to our 3rd graders today, same story. All that comes out of the money that you give on Sunday mornings and that you give so generously. That's the 2023 campaign, and 3 weeks from now, I'm going to ask that everyone bring their commitment card on that day to share what their intended gift is for 2023, just to keep the church moving, okay? That's the every year program. But then the second campaign is the Basecamp campaign. Now, this is a capital campaign, meaning that this is for capital improvements, that this is for debt, and this is above and beyond the regular giving. And so we call this, sometimes in the church, we call this second mile giving. It's on top of the 2023 campaign money. It's not instead of, it's not an either or, it's on top of that. And here's what that program is about. Bear with me for a few minutes as I tell you about the Basecamp campaign and exactly what that goes toward. So, as we've already talked about, the church is our base camp. And just over 20 years ago, a group of people in this local area had a vision and leadership to plant a church community in this relatively new and rapidly growing area on this part of Birmingham. And so originally, people were meeting in living rooms. Later on, they started meeting in our local elementary school. And then with a later vision, the plan was, let's build a beautiful campus, like a retreat setting, back in the woods, but adjacent to the neighborhood, and let's build the kind of church that we would want to be a light, to be a beacon of hope, to be a base camp to our community. And so that's what happened, and $10 million was taken out to help build this gorgeous facility and buy this land. And what a marvelous gift that was. And some of you here today may have been a part of that first wave, that first generation of people who made that possible. And if that's part of your story, we are deeply grateful for what you did and having that vision. You were the early climbers. You were the pioneers of this place, and thank you. But many of us, that's not our part of our story. We came into this, so we are now recipients of this. And we are entrusted with caring for this facility, this base camp, these grounds. And so we've got our own part to play in this. Now, over the past 20 years, that money has been paid off and paid off and paid off and taken that number lower and lower. And now today, all that remains is $1.2 million, which is a lot of money. Definitely, that's the case. But compared to where we've been, we're close. We're really close. $1.2 million helps this building and these grounds, just after the 20-year anniversary of this congregation, to be paid for, and what a marvelous gift that would be. So we don't want to continue to carry that debt further, and It's coming around now where that debt is due again, and we need a plan to pay it off. Because if we're just making interest payments, obviously this is going to take a long, long time. And we're close enough now that let's get over the hump. Let's make this happen. But in addition to just the debt, we're going to add an extra $100,000 to the campaign. So the grand total then is $1.3 million. And this extra $100,000 is going to go to some necessary Basecamp improvements to this facility. Now, again, I would not say that this church is the be-all, end-all of churches in terms of this is a place that we come here and have arrived, and this is where we want to stay forevermore. We never want to leave these walls because it's a functional place. It's a base camp place. It's meant so that we can go out and we can do more ministry, right? The idea should never be that we come here on Sunday morning and we never want to leave. We want to be inspired. We want to be challenged. We want to be nurtured, nourished, filled, and we want to go out and we want to serve. And we want to fulfill the mission of this church and of the United Methodist Church as a whole, which is to make disciples of Jesus Christ for the transformation of the world. It's beautiful in its simplicity, but that's what we're here for. To make disciples of Jesus Christ for the transformation of the world. Which means then that this is not a destination, this is a base camp. Our goal is to go out and to come back, and to go out again and push further than we did last week, and then to come back and push further still. But our goal is never to make this the end-all, be-all. It is simply the base camp of where we are trying to accomplish our bigger goal of making disciples of Jesus Christ for the transformation of the world. So we do need to tend to our base camp. And as God told Moses, the base camp does make a difference. And how we care for it will make a difference. So one of the things that we're going to do is talk about ways that we can improve this space, the space that we use most of all as a congregation on Sunday mornings, the worship center space. First plan is to put a new floor on top of this one. A new one that's a more modern look of a floor. A heavy-duty vinyl that has a wood grain look to it. It'll be an attractive place for us to meet. Now, I don't know how many of you have been coming here for a long time, but eventually we stopped seeing that there was a three-point line in our worship space. We have a baseline and a free throw line. I have yet to meet a bride who wants to get a 3-second violation walking down the aisle on her wedding day, right? And so we stopped seeing that, but other people do, and so impressions matter. As we think about what we use this space for, I think the idea back when this was built was to be a great multi-purpose space, including a gymnasium. Because the grand vision is to one day build another worship facility on top of our gravel parking lot. And one day we hope to be able to do that. But for the foreseeable future, we'll continue to worship in this space, which meets our needs. But we can make the space more useful for how we actually use it. So the room will continue to be a multi-use space, but we probably don't need basketball and volleyball lines permanently etched into the floor. So that'll be one thing. Another thing is fresh coat of paint. Let's update the look of the whole room. It's time for a fresh color scheme. That'll do wonders for this place. It'll just give it a fresh look. Next thing, have you noticed that there are 7 windows up here? You stop seeing them, don't you? But if you're a visitor, you probably notice that they've been blacked out, and they've been blacked out for years. Why? Because it's a real pain in the neck to get up on an extension ladder to take that down. So why don't we put up mechanical blinds up there? When the service starts, the blinds come down. As the service ends and we finish the last song, the blinds come up. Natural sunlight comes pouring in on Sunday morning. Good Friday, imagine that as we are having the service, we slowly lower the shades to make the room dark as we remember the crucifixion. Like, these are the kinds of things that we can do. Put them on this side too. Let's go ahead and do the whole thing. When we talk about additional things of ways where this extra $100,000 will go, we need some exterior signage. Again, you don't, because you know where you're going. But first impressions make a big difference. Welcome to our base camp. If you come in where we have a sign out by the road, the first thing that you see and the first place to turn in is to a gravel lot. That's not where we want our visitors to go. There's a trailer out there. It's not particularly pretty. We've got some mobile classrooms, which fit our needs just fine, but it's not our first impression that we're trying to make. So if we had a sign out there that said, hey, keep continuing and then veer right, that's where the office is, that's where the main entrance is, that's where the worship center is, that's where Grace Kids Child Development Center is, that'll make a difference. And this is our auxiliary parking lot. But truly, every Christmas Eve and Easter Sunday, I have had someone, or word has gotten back to me that someone parked back there because they thought that that's where they should go for their first time visit. And that's not the impression we were hoping to make, right? It's a base camp, but let's bring you in the front door, at least, on your first visit. So these things do matter. They make a difference. But I've saved to last the most important piece, which is if we truly believe that our mission is to strengthen families by making and growing highly committed disciples of Jesus Christ for the transformation of the world, as we have written on our wall, as we have written on our website, as we proclaim as our mission statement, then we need to be about reaching our neighbors. And right now we are paying tens of thousands of dollars a year, paying interest payments on a debt that we should be able to overcome. And I would like to designate all or most of that money that we are using for that for further outreach. We are bulldozing massive tracts of land in the front of Liberty Park by the Publix, where they are building hundreds of housing units. And regardless of how everybody feels about that, it's going to mean we've got new neighbors coming. And if we are truly living our mission, then we should be able to meet them as soon as they enter those doors. When they move in, we should be on their doorstep. We should be there with a welcome basket. We should be doing door-to-door campaigns. We should welcome and know something about everybody who enters this neighborhood, and we should make a great first impression by saying, hey, we are a base camp type of ministry. Our ministry is to reach you, and we want to call you in here because we have something that we believe is worth sharing. Because the other passage of Scripture that I read this morning is Jesus' own words when he said, "Come to me, all of you who carry burdens, who are weary, who are struggling, who are hurting, who need healing, who need hope." And the church is in a position to be able to offer that. That's what we want to put our emphasis on. That's where we need to be. So as a base camp church, we have an incredible opportunity to live out our mission, but also to be reminded in this whole process and in this capital campaign what it is that we're here to do, what it is that we're really about. Yes, we come together, a wonderful, diverse group of people. And I love that this church makes room for people who are from the immediate neighborhood across the street and from the broader community. We have become more of a regional kind of church. And that's an incredibly beautiful thing. We've got lots of diversity here. We've got economic diversity. We've got some racial diversity. We've got political and ideological diversity. Thanks be to God. We can come together because our goal is to reach the summit. Our goal is to make disciples of Jesus Christ for the transformation of the world. And every week that we are here, we leave this place to push a little further, to try a little harder, to come back, to be replenished, and to push out and do it again. Let's be that base camp church. Let's be the kind of church that the people who planted this place envisioned for us. Let's be the kind of church that God called the Israelites to be. Let's be the kind of church that God told Jesus and instructed his disciples to be. Let's be the kind of church that sees this as an essential base camp for our ministry. But it's what prepares us, equips us, and dispatches us to do the real work, to make disciples, to heal the sick and the spiritually wounded, and to let people know that the living God is alive at work in their community and in their lives. Let us pray.